Welcome to the Connectable podcast.
The Connectable podcast starts in 3, 2, 1.
All right, here we go. Deb is not here tonight, but that's okay. We're bringing back one of our friends from a couple of years ago when Deb and I were doing the Character Combine podcast. We got to know this guy on one of the episodes, and he's got a crazy story. And somehow, dude, it seems like your life's got even crazier. Like back then, I'm like, dang, this dude's busy. And then now it's like, you know, you look at your Instagram page and it's even wilder. So I'm excited to talk to this dude. We've got Tyler Andrade. He's the owner of Absolute Flex Appeal. And he's also a firefighter now. So what's going on, man?
Man, it's great to see you, reconnect, you know, and catch up on all the craziness that's going on.
For sure, man. I was going to say last time when you were on the podcast, I said you might be the biggest guest that we've had, like size wise, physically the most imposing guest. We've had some big guys on this podcast. So that may not be true this time around, but you are still a mountain of a man. That's why you own a gym and that's why you're a firefighter, man. So people may not realize this looking at the video, but Tyler is a big, strong dude, but just an awesome dude. And I'm glad that you were able to hop on this podcast, especially last minute, man. I hate doing that to people, but you know, sometimes guests drop out and then I got to scramble. So I appreciate it, man.
Hell yeah, man. Let's get it.
Yeah. So, well, that's basically, I usually like to start the podcast by letting people know how we're connected. That's how we're connected. We met through the Character Combine. You were one of our early guests from when we first started back in 2019. And then we've been following each other on social media since. That's pretty simple. That's how we're connected. But, that being said, man, we were just talking. I have a bunch of other stuff that I want to talk to you about. I've heard your story. It's an incredible story. So can you just give us like a really quick snapshot of how you grew up and your background? Because it's a really crazy story. If you guys want to hear the whole story, like full details, all that stuff, go check out Character Combine that Tyler was on, or go find any other podcast that Tyler's on, because I'm sure you share the story. But just for this audience here, just give us a quick snapshot of your life and how you grew up.
Absolutely. So I was born in Oakland, raised in East San Diego. From 8th grade to 10th grade, I had a serious drug problem, was in 3 different group homes. At 18, I had my son. And then in 2016, I attempted suicide because I was struggling, failing at everything. And just to keep it real, was being a victim to my circumstances that I created. 2017 turned around and, after the failed attempt at committing suicide, I got into the gym. The gym has always been my savior. So got into the gym and turned it from being just a personal trainer, and then took it to a gym. In 2018, I opened up my first gym. 2019, I opened up my second gym. And then at the end of 2019, I opened up a cryotherapy center within the gym. So that's Absolute Zero. So I have the gym and a cryotherapy center. And then 2021, I became a wildland firefighter for one of Northern California's most hardest hand crews. And if you don't know what a hand crew is, we literally will go out and fight a fire with nothing but just a garden tool. No water, very minimal resources or support. And we hike in, and we are spending anywhere from 14 to 21 days camping. And when I mean camping, that's not the nicest thing. We call it spiked out. And we are like living in the dirt, fighting, and just it's an adrenaline filled kick in your teeth and hang on, because it's a wild ride.
So it's not like RVs, campers, stuff like that.
Hell no. We see those dudes with RVs and we look at them and we're like, you're so soft, man. Yeah. You guys are fucking soft.
Man, that's wild. So typically what I would do is I would ask like why you started doing the firefighting thing, but I'm going to do it in a little bit of a different order. I want to know, okay, how do I want to ask this? So what is a typical day like for you as a firefighter and what you do? And then not just that, but you're in California, and obviously every summer we see these crazy wildfires. And I know you were up at some of the different wildfires this summer. What does a day like that look like? And then I want to go circle back around and figure out, because I think we need to know the extent of it. You know what I mean? Because it'd be like, I want people to get the full picture of what you do and how intense it is. And then I want to circle back and figure out like, why in the world did you do this? So let's start here. What's your day like? And then what is it like when you have to deal with these crazy wildfires?
So when we're on season, And let's say that we're out and we call it a roll, right? A roll is anywhere from 14 to 21 days, and it's a 16-hour day. Now we say 16 hours by the books, but there's plenty of times where we've pulled 20-hour days, and I'm by no means trying to sugarcoat it. You're out there getting your ass handed to you.
Sure.
You are usually up by 5, getting everything squared away by 5:30, breakfast by 6, and you are geared up, ready to go by 6:30, hiking in, because there are times where we hit one fire where it would take us 3 hours to hike one way in. And the elevation, we're at anywhere from, on an easy fire at 3,000 feet to the one where we were getting broke off we were up at 9,700 feet trying to fight a wildfire that's running, and human elements like, bro, I just can't breathe is a legit factor. So you're hiking in by 6:30, right?
Yeah.
And we have our briefings and all that. And you were trying to wrap this fire. And what I mean by wrap it is you're trying to literally put a line between the green and what we call the black. And the black is literally what is burning or is burnt.
Mm-hmm.
And then the green is fuel. So we're trying to be right in between this monster of a fire, scrape an 18 to 24-inch line, and you're trying to just slow the spread, if not put it out. And then you're calling in, if you have them, resources from overhead like bucket drops or the fire retardant that you see, the planes drop. You are at minimum putting in, right? So we said 7, you hike in and you've just spent 3 hours hiking, right? And so people are like, oh, 3 hours hiking, dude, that's my workout. Well, that's our warm up. And I'm not trying to be egotistical, but
yeah,
you hike in, and then it's time to get to work, right? You get situated with the land, with the topography, what's going on, the different weather conditions, because weather's always changing. Fire creates its own weather patterns, and that's what's nuts, because fire we had it happen to us once where fire's trying to pull in all this oxygen to keep burning and keep burning and keep burning, and then next thing you know it, you've got a full-blown lightning storm cracking off over the top of you, and now we're legit having to run for our life because we're the tallest thing out there on this peak or this ridge. And now you're like, dude, I'm not only having to worry about a fire, I'm legit trying to hide because this lightning's trying to like crack off, and it's close, and so there's times where you go through these experiences, and in the heat of the moment, you're like, dude, this fucking sucks. This sucks, like I wish I was home. I wish I was, in some comfortable situation. And here you are with your brothers just getting your ass handed to you. But at the end of the season, at the end of the day, those are the moments where you're like, damn, dude, I can't believe we lived through that,
Man, dude. So obviously, right now I feel like less of a man. That's
No,
okay.
no,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm gonna push through this thing. But a couple of years ago, because I work for the state, that's my full-time job, and we went to a couple of the local assistance centers for like the Santa Rosa fire, the Napa fire, some of those. And I remember hearing some of the stories of people that were coming through looking for assistance, and they were talking about how quickly the fire goes. Like, I don't think people realize, it's one of those things where sometimes with these elements, water, like the ocean, right? Sometimes people don't realize how strong the ocean is. Same with fire. I don't think people realize how intense and how fast fire is. And people were talking about how they started putting stuff in their cars when they got the notice that you need to evacuate. And then you go through those evacuation or the burn areas, and that you see like cars with the trunk open and stuff like halfway in, because you realize, oh, they didn't have time to finish packing or drive off. So, what was that like, seeing it from your perspective while you're in these fires? Because like, can you even describe how fast the fire is?
I can describe it, but it doesn't do it justice. When we were on the Caldor fire, we were one of the first 5 hand crews on there, right? And so you get on there and you see the stats, right? And you see it in briefing, and someone will tell you, oh, right now the fire is at 80,000 acres. And it's kind of hard to put some kind of thought behind it, like 80,000 acres. Like, what do you compare that to, So an acre is 1.3 football fields, right? Is what it breaks down to. So 80,000 acres, you're like, damn, dude, okay, that's a lot of football fields, but it still doesn't register.
Sure.
These things, well, especially the Caldor fire, we were doing the numbers, and the Caldor fire was running at almost 12,000 acres a minute. And when you think
Jeez.
of it that way, like, okay, so let's break it down. If I were to tell you, hey, I want you to run as fast as you can from one side of the end zone to the other side of the end zone, and let's see how fast this thing is running in 60 seconds, 12,000 football fields, and what might take us 10 seconds to run one football field, right? For the average person, this
Yeah.
thing's doing 12,060 minutes. I'm sorry, in a minute.
Jeez.
So when you put it that way, you're like, well, then why am I here? You know, like, and
Yeah, for sure.
it's kind of hard to justify, like, man, I'm out here, like, my brothers are risking our lives. We're away from our families. We're away from our loved ones. And there's just this sense of service that I wish I could describe, but when you're in it, and someone comes up to you with tears in their eyes and you saved my house, you're like, holy shit. Like that is something that it's hard to take in, because you're like, shit, like there's no emotional meaning for us because it's not our house. And I'm not trying to be insensitive. You're like, I'm just out here doing my job, you know.
Sure.
And this person's over here like, thank you, I'll do whatever you want, like I'm indebted to you. And you're just like, I'm just doing a job, you know.
Yeah.
And that's it's a trippy feeling sometimes, and almost bittersweet, because then on the flip side, you know, like, let's say we weren't able, then there were times where you're doing your best to put in as much work as you can, but you're working against elements, and sometimes you just can't battle certain elements, and they pull you off the line because the fire's ripping too fast, and someone still comes up to you and says, thank you so much for being out here. And you're like, like, and they're like, we lost our home, but you being out there meant everything. There's some weird nuances that go on where you're just like, it's really tough to again take it all in and absorb it, because then someone will come up and say, thank you so much for doing this, but then it's like, shit, I gotta go right back to work in a few hours, you know. And it's
Right.
just this numb like feeling of like, okay, tomorrow I gotta put in more work, I gotta put in more line, tomorrow we've got to cover more ground, and it's just a non-stop go get it kind of mentality.
Man, that's crazy. Well, and I know, like you said, you have a family. I met your awesome wife when we recorded the first time, because we were doing this thing in person back then. But that's got to be a weird feeling. And please walk me through it, because like you said, there's all these emotions that you're dealing with, right? Like these people are coming up indebted to you, showing you all this thankfulness. But as you're fighting the fires, so on one half, I'm sure you're thinking about your family, right? And like you're fighting because you want to make sure you make it back to your family. And at the same time, you see all these families that are losing everything they have, and they have their family. So I imagine that makes you think of your family again. Like, what kind of emotions does your family, like what kind of emotion do you bring into that because you have a family?
This is where it's really tough. And there's a lot of things that are starting to transpire as far as wildland firefighter mental health. And there's a lot of things that I hope to bring to light for people to start, you know, just checking on. But as far as bringing emotions in, you can't, like, you really do. You can't bring anything into the fire, because you have to be so in the moment. Because let's just say you and I were on the line, we're cutting line, and I'm off thinking about my family, my girlfriend, my dog, whatever it is, and I'm not mentally in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now putting you and everybody else at risk, because heaven forbid, and it happens a lot, if I take the wrong step and I fall off, you know, the cliff, I fall off the ridge, or what we call stump holes, where a fallen tree is fallen and you fall into a 3-foot stump hole, that is legit a burning pit that is covered with some of the hottest material that's burning underneath, and no one sees it because it's covered by legit ash. And so you fall in, and it happened on the Windy fire, where a firefighter fell into a stump hole, and they got their hands 3rd-degree burns from their hands all the way up to their elbows and their legs, and you're done. That person had to get skin grafts, right? And you're sitting there and you're like, man, this crew was like not too far from us. And so having those emotions, you just can't have them, which is which is hard because you go through so many emotions internally, but on the external, you have to be locked in despite the fear, despite, every kind of adrenaline and second thought that comes through your mind. You have to stuff it away.
Now, is that something that are you trained to do that prior to? Is there training you go through to make, or is that like something they teach you and coach you through? Like, hey, when you're out there, you got to, or is it something you learn in the moment? Or, I mean, like, where does that come in?
There's a lot of it where preseason is what we call it, right? So we'll go out and as a crew, because we've got to gel together. Like any team, you've got to gel together quick before you actually hit quote unquote game day, because
Sure.
you just don't want to go out there not one cohesive unit.
Mhm.
So by putting in line together and doing project work and working together in simulated situations in a non-fire environment, you learn to work through things, but there's not the emotional factor that comes into it. So there's no training that comes into it. This is where it's a very hardcore, gritty kind of environment, because you've got supervisors that are telling you, hey, hurry up, you're not cutting fast enough. Hey, you've got to push harder because you're starting to slow down. And I don't care that you're tired. And this is part of this stuff where it's not for everyone, because you have to be able to bottle stuff in. You have to be able to really compartmentalize quick. And if you don't, you'll see it'll eat people up. And unfortunately, we had one guy quit who just was like, this isn't for me. And you're like, dude, you go through this entire process to get onto this crew, and then you finally make it to your first fire and then realize this isn't for you. Well, now you just screwed the entire team, because now we're down a person and it's too late to bring somebody in to fill your shoes because we've already gelled together as a team. So there's all these variables that come up, and having a fixed mindset of, all right, I'm going to go from point A to point B will ruin you. You almost have to go into it like, whatever happens today, and we're just going to make the best of it. And as cheesy as that sounds, it's the only way you'll get through it.
No, I don't think that's cheesy at all. I mean, I mean, you're doing it in a much more intense environment, but that's really a life lesson, right? Like, you can do all the planning you want and say, okay, I have a plan A. This is my plan A. I'm going to go for it. And then we all know in life, and you're a business owner too, man. Like, how often does your plan A work every single time? It doesn't. By the time you're done with it, it's like, oh, I'm on plan J, K, and it's like, you just have to roll with it. So, I mean, it's a, like I said, it's an intense way to explain that life lesson, but it's so true, man. Like, stuff happens and you just got to roll with it. And unfortunately for you guys, it's life and death. So that's the interesting. So multiple times already, just in the few minutes we've been talking, you've referred to your team as brothers. And that's not, like, I know that's an intentional thing. That's something that is not just, being said to be dramatic. Like, that's something that you actually feel, I can tell. And it's not like you're saying, hey, my coworkers and I, my squad. It's like, no, these are brothers. So at what point, because obviously you're going through all this training, the whole training's hell. And obviously what you guys do in the field is craziness. At what point do you feel like you guys really, so like starting from day one, when you guys first meet, at what point, or how many weeks into it, or at what point do you guys feel like, okay, we're actually brothers now? Because I imagine it happens before you guys actually go out to the fires, right?
I can only speak for our crew and our overhead, right? So all of our big supervisors that are calling shots, they purposely preseason are pushing us hard, and they're pushing us hard for a reason, to induce that anxiety, right? And I don't mean it in a negative way, but they're inducing all of this pain, all of this suffering, all of this mental chaos, so that we do come together. Because when we first start, you're looking at, anywhere from 10 to 20 strangers when you start. No one knows anybody. You're lucky if you know somebody, like maybe you got me on the crew and I know you, but after that, like, it is a very competitive environment, because not only are we strangers, but then you have a group of like-minded individuals who want to prove themselves that they are the hardest dudes out there. And so you have this weird atmosphere of, and this is in the very beginning, right? This weird atmosphere of, I'm the top dog, and you don't really try to fit in because you're trying to stand out to prove that you're a top dog. But by doing that, you also disrupt the process of becoming brothers. right? So because I want to stand out and say, hey, look at me, I'm a badass. Well,
Yeah.
I'm really screwing the team over because I'm being selfish and not selfless, right? I should really be turning around and saying, hey, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And putting all my efforts into being a brother for these guys, right? So that you have to go through these growing pains, right? Of everyone trying to be the top dog. And then this is why overhead has to be so hard. Because if not, then you've got a crew of prima donnas who are like, hey, look at me, but no one's putting in any work for their brothers right next to them. So our overhead did a really good job of just breaking us off for 2 months before we hit our first fire. And that's, full kit, and our full kit is 45 pounds, right? In our pack. And we're talking, Nomex, which is, I don't want to say fireproof, but can withstand some kind of fire temperatures. So it doesn't really breathe. And you're out in these, from May, June, July is really where we start ramping up, because then from, June until about late October, early November is when the season ends. So right off the bat, it's a hard push, and we're doing everything from hard hikes to uphill line creating. And creating line is, again, you're digging dirt, with a garden tool, uphill, hiking hard. And it's always this repetitive grind. And I hate to say words like grind, but they are just trying to, they're just right, trying to really dial you in. And by dialing you in, it's constant, repetitive suffering, straight up suffering. So to get to your question, we really become brothers right before, and our crew, we were dialed in as a crew before, but really what happens is you become a solid brotherhood right after your first fire. And the reason for that is because you go, and collectively, we all go through so many emotions at the same time on different scales of, how you feel what, and you still have to show up for the guy next to you. And so you go through 3 hours of hiking one way. There's no transportation, right? You get dropped off in a forest, and okay, there's no cell service, there's no toilets, you're sleeping legit in the dirt with Mother Nature and everything that's going around. And oh, by the way, you got to fight this wildfire. So everything goes out the window, because you start, again, that me, look at me, you start going from look at me to legit. You said I was a big man. There were days where I would go and I'm like, dude, I'm having a hard day. Like, can just talk to me. And I'm talking to what used to be a stranger, and I'm like trying to make sure that I'm not the only one that's struggling. And then he's like, dude, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to seem soft, but I'm struggling with the same shit. And you're like, fuck, dude, I'm glad I'm not the only one, And then again, it's that what it is that vulnerability, right? Sure. Being vulnerable and saying, hey, dude, I'm struggling. And then him being transparent, saying, I'm struggling too. And then that's where that bond becomes deep, because, right, if I seen you on the street, I would tell you, and I'd be like, oh, I'm having a great day. And I could be having the worst day ever. But out there's no way to get in contact with your family, at least in that fire. There was no way for us to get in contact with our family or get any kind of emotional comfort or support. So when you lean on your other brothers like that, that's when that bond becomes solid. I mean, you can't break it. And I still look at those dudes, even now that the season's over. Those are some of my closest best friends I've ever had. And I've only known them for 6 months, but we went through so much shit together that you're like, and there's no entertainment, there's no TV, there's no radios. So it's old school conversations like this. And I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. We have these bickering, brotherly like type of arguments. And that's where the sweet science of it all blends together, where one day you and I could hate each other. The next day we love each other. But then at the end of the day, regardless of how we feel that day, we put in work just as much, despite what any kind of differences we had. And then the crew pride that we have, right? The pride in our brotherhood is almost, for a lack of better words, gang-like, where don't you dare say something to my brother. If another crew says something to our brother, all of us are saying, hey man, don't talk to him like that. And I'm saying it nicely, but
I was just saying,
it's a very, don't talk to my brother like that. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. That's the PG version. I think it's a little grittier than that. I know. Man, that's incredible. It's a cool thing, I imagine, to be a part of. You know, all that stuff that you said. It's like an intent. Again, all this stuff is super intense. It's an intense way to come to that realization that these dudes around you are your brothers. But man, what a rewarding thing at the end of it. And I've got to ask too, man, because I laughed a little bit when you said grind, because you and I when we messaged earlier, we kind of joked about this a little bit. That is interesting though, because you could have a group of guys out there that are like, hey, just like you said, if you come to them with this, hey man, I'm having a rough day. It's like, man, you just gotta keep grinding. Just gotta keep grinding. It's like, what is this? Like, is this an Instagram post? Like, what are you talking about? You know, keep
TED talk. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, keep grinding, it's like, that's not helpful, because the bottom line is, man, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're having a rough day and this other dude that you're trying to share this with is like just kind of telling you basically, hey dude, bury it and keep going, that's going to affect you mentally, which could potentially be dangerous out in the field, right? So it's like, if you have someone, your brother, who's there, is like, hey man, I get it, dude, I'm dealing with the same thing. That's almost like, it seems like it's going to free you up to be the best version of you as a firefighter in the field, rather than you having all this crap in your head trying to deal with. So, you know, that's why we're kind of joking earlier, this idea of, it sounds cool to grind, to push, to, you know, hustle, but sometimes it's not the smartest thing to do, right? Like sometimes you have to unload that stuff. And then when it's appropriate, when you guys have to physically grind, then you'll be able to. But
absolutely. Like,
you know what I mean?
You hit it right on the head, because that you, again, right. You're going through so much turmoil, right? And I'm looking for any kind of just the smallest amount of hope or comfort. And if I come to you and I'm like, dude, I'm struggling today, like I'm just getting my fucking ass handed to me, are you feeling the same? Am I the only one? And by me being vulnerable like that, and if you were to turn around and be like, you're fucking soft, you gotta grind, get after it, this, you're like, damn dude, maybe I am soft. And then I start right kind of internally starting to implode, you know, maybe I am soft, maybe I'm not fit out to be like these dudes. And that dude could be going through the exact same thing, but because he chose to override it and not be vulnerable or trust the brotherhood, he now, right, without even realizing it, has caused me to go off the deep end. And so a lot of times, by not being able to have the power to be vulnerable, you could fuck so much more shit up, because you could just be scratching on the surface being like, hey Tyler, I'm struggling today, and if I hit that approach wrong, it's going to send you in a different direction, right? Where if I choose and hear you out and say, yeah man, like, you know, you're not the only one, I'm struggling with the same thing, I miss home, I miss my wife, I miss a good cooked meal. And then you're like, fuck, dude, at least I'm not the only one. And there's that comfort, there's that hope, and there's that bond, right? But it takes a real special person to not just always sound like some Instagram regurgitated person, you know, post all the time.
Sure. Well, do you ever think about this, dude? This is wild, and you would know, because I mean, you've obviously, you're a business owner. You know, there's probably some dude out there that's working like a white collar job, right? You know, up in a high rise, suit and tie every single day, that would struggle with this concept of reaching out to someone and saying, hey, I'm struggling, what about you? Like, you know what I mean? And they're in a comfy position. It might be a difficult job, but like physically they're in a comfy position. You guys, blood, sweat, tears all over your face, and you guys are like, hey man, I'm struggling. Like, it's a weird concept, right? Because you would think that like you guys being these big, tough dudes would have a tougher time with that. But when you guys are faced with, I mean, again, I hate to keep saying it, but like life and death, like you get to that point, right? Like it's going to happen if you allow it, and it's going to make you better at your job, which is crazy. Let me ask you this, dude. So I've seen I hope this is okay to say. I've seen your house on Instagram. It's a beautiful house. It's incredible. And most people would be thinking, if they saw your house, and everybody who's listening to this, just take my word for it. If you saw his house, you'd be like, why is he sleeping in the dirt? Because you have an incredible house, dude. Like, what was it? Because not only you have this amazing house, amazing family, you're the CEO. So you're like at the top of your business, And then you decide to go to a job where you're down at the bottom again, just like everybody else, taking orders from someone else, which is not where you've been for however many years. Like when you start adding all that stuff up, you kind of look sideways at Tyler like, what? Like, why? And you kind of alluded to earlier, like there's a greater sense of purpose that comes with it. But like tell me like so kind of going back again, like when you decided to actually do this, what brought you to that point of actually saying, hey, I want to do this firefighting thing?
Honestly, I was struggling, and you touched on it as well. I was struggling with my own leadership as far as for the business and the team that I had within the business.
Mm.
And I'd hit this ceiling that a lot of people don't really talk about. And and what happens is again, not being vulnerable or opening up to it, you then have the example of, like you said, this white collar dude who's in a penthouse, but has the mental maturity of a 21 or 18-year-old and is this emotional fucking roller coaster, and you're like, bro, that's cool. You make this money, but we all know you're a fucking douchebag, where, and it just boils down to the pure fact that he can't be vulnerable, the pure fact that he can't say, I'm struggling in this area and I need help. So one, I knew going into this, it was going to be tough. And I took a gamble because, fire season is anywhere from 6 to 7 months of I may or may not lose my business, because being away from that long in still post COVID, in the gym industry is fragile. The gym industry is finally starting to come back, but not being able to be in the driver's seat and saying, again, trusting my team that I have back home so that I can come back as a better leader was a gamble that not too many people were like, why are you doing that? So the biggest thing was, one, I needed help with leadership, and I didn't want to take leadership from a white collar dude because I just don't respect that. And especially with the upbringing that I brought to you, I need a leader who low-key intimidates me, and then I listen. Because if I look at you as a leader and I don't respect you, or I don't, in some way find you, and it doesn't have to be a negative intimidating, it could just be like, damn, dude, that dude's got his shit together. Maybe I'm not on his level. That kind of intimidation, that's what I look up to. And coming out here, knowing these dudes were just raw savages and purposely asking, what is the hardest crew? And Hot Shot Brewery helped me, they're like, hey, dude, Tuolumne Rancheria is one of the hardest hand crews out here, and you're going to get plenty of doses of getting your ass handed to you. And I was like, okay, dude, where do I sign up?
Yeah.
And that's what really, was the main driving point. I needed to be a better leader, a better husband, be father. Because the real fact was, I got so caught up in making money and so caught up in how I was perceived, from an outside external image, that I was losing everything on the inside. My relationship with my dad was on the rocks, with my son was on the rocks, with my wife was on the rocks, because I cared more about being Insta famous or Insta cool or whatever the fuck people say, TikTok famous, and was so concerned about materialistic shit that I was again imploding, because I was searching for some kind of meaning, some kind of real purpose other than just, yeah, I'm Tyler. All right. I'm an entrepreneur. I own 2 businesses. I live in a 3-story house in a country club, and having all that, it didn't fill the void that I hoped it was going to fill. And the void, now that I know how to fill it, it's hard fucking work. It's going out in the forest and just relying on my brothers, or relying on myself, and being alone, like really unplugged and alone, and just being legit with myself in the most organic way that it could be, instead of having a computer screen, a phone, some kind of notification always going off and trying to grab my attention. There was a lot of focus, and there's a lot of internal growth that comes from it, because out there, right? Real survival is coming home, or, there's so much fucking convenience we're overloaded with. I got fast food here, and I got fast food here, and I got fast food here. And, I can eat fast food all day if I wanted to. And I've got every kind of convenience and comfort at my phone or on the computer or on the TV that I can order whatever I want, and we just become this fucking negative vacuum that just consumes. And we look around and then we're like, well, shit, what else can I consume? Damn, dude, like, how about you give back? And that's really where it came from, is wanting to just be a selfless servant and really do something meaningful. And I mean it. Being a wildland firefighter has brought more pride to myself and to my family than saying, oh, my son owns 2 businesses. Like, my mom is probably, and this is what's nuts, I'd almost argue my mom is more proud that I'm a wildland firefighter than the fact that her son has 2 businesses. And I would say the same for my wife as well, because let's be real, when someone's like, oh, I own 2 businesses, oh, you got lucky, dude, screw you and your money, and then you flip it and you're like, oh, well, my husband's a wildland firefighter. Like, damn, that's badass,
Yeah, for sure. No, that's so funny. That's so true too. No, it's what's crazy, man. I do want to say, like, and I'm not just saying this because of what you're saying or because you're on here, but like, it's weird. I think if I was to go back when we first met, and I haven't listened. I mean, obviously, I don't go back and listen to those episodes, but I'm curious now, if I was to go back and listen to the episode that you and I recorded for Character Combine, you feel like a different person. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's still you. Like, obviously, like I said, you're a mountain of a man. Like, if I saw you on the streets, like, oh, there's Tyler Andrade, but you know what I mean? Like, but just your demeanor seems different. And it's obvious that this whole thing has had a tremendous impact. And not, hey, guess what, dude? I like the guy I met back then too. So, I like both you and the guy from the past, but it is obvious, man, to me that you have had like this huge change. And that's me. Like, we've only talked twice. We've talked twice and we've followed each other on social media. So I can't even imagine, like, to your point, what it's like for your family to see the transformation in you over all these things. And like you said, man, it's such a weird thing, is obviously the show's called Connectable. So we want to get connected with people. But we also like to talk about how people get connected, and what you said about unplugging actually has helped you get more connected to your family, more connected to your brothers out in the field. And especially in the gym world, like you said, man, it's a weird thing because, you can try to fight it all you want, but if you own a gym, if you're not on social media, showing who's at your gym and who's lifting, and, you're kind of not doing it right. Like, you kind of have to do it. But, like you said, you can get so engulfed by it that you lose sight of stuff. So, I mean, that's incredible, man. Like, usually when it comes to leadership, I read a book. I was like, hey, there's a dope book about leadership. Let me grab that. Tyler goes out and fights fires. Again, man, I'm not the most manly guy compared to Tyler. I've accepted it. I'm okay with it.
No, not at all, bro. Not at all.
No, that's awesome. Let me ask you this. Okay. So I have a couple more questions for you. I've been taking notes here. I can basically take notes on this whole episode, but there's 2 things I wanted to bring up. Let's start with the less serious thing first. So obviously I know it's like it's a well-known thing, right? In firefighter culture, food is a big deal. You guys eat well. And if you can't cook, then you're kind of worthless, right? Like, if you can't cook, like, bro, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
So I know it's like for a firehouse, for what you guys do. I know you guys are obviously eating, it's a little bit different because you guys are camping and stuff like that. But like, what is the food like? Is it still fire? Is it still amazing? No pun intended on fire. I wish I didn't say that. That sounded stupid.
No, that's good. No, it's tough. So if you're spiked out and there's no, like, we had one fire where we were completely spiked out and cut off from any kind of outside resources. And we literally would have, and I have videos and I'll send them to you. We literally would have a helicopter fly in, right? And it's attached to this cargo net. It would fly in and drop off these boxes of MREs and Gatorades. And after day 5, right? Because again, you're out there for 14 to 21 days straight. At least for me, after day 5, I was no longer eating MREs. I would just eat like the peanut butter packets, because you get so sick of them. And so it's funny, they'll try to boost morale. And on that same fire, they flew in KFC. I absolutely hate KFC. Hate it, despise it. They flew KFC in, and I swore it was Christmas, and I ate the bone clean. I mean, if I could have ate the bone, I would have ate the bone. But
Dang. It was like filet mignon, like a T-bone, or it was like prime rib or something.
It was the best KFC I've ever had in my life. And again, right, you're covered in dirt, fire, soot, ash, and we're just eating it. Like we were like fat kids in a candy store, So there's one aspect where food can be disgusting, and you start to learn to bring your own kind of snacks, like one guy would bring peanut butter filled pretzels. And you don't touch him because that was his like comfort food. When he was struggling, he'd throw in some peanut butter pretzels. One dude would bring his own protein bars. One dude would bring a bag of protein, like powdered protein.
Oh, yeah.
So you learn, and that first fire was a real wake up call of like, oh, I better bring something because I can't just survive off MRE peanut butter, which is horrible in itself.
Sure.
But then there's the absolute contrast where you go on to a fire like the Caldor fire, and the base camp is full blown, like a full on city. Like there's laundry, there's showers, there's you name it, every kind of resource you can think of. There's therapy dogs walking around, so you can just hug a dog. Like it's pretty badass.
Yeah.
And then the trip to that is, again, because this was my first season and I'm a rookie, there are inmates serving you. Right. And they're in full orange jumpsuits, and they make some of the best damn food I've ever had. Damn, bro, you're really getting down in the kitchen back there.
Yeah.
And they would cook up some of the best meals, and again, because you're getting everything top of the line, there was no need for, like, we were probably eating excess out there just because we were like, oh, we could have brownies and we can have this. Like, they take care of you. So it's one or the other. You're either just getting your ass handed to you when you're on the fire and you're eating MREs and you're hating life, or you're eating like a king. Now, as far as wildland fire, we can grill, like open flame and stuff like that.
Ooh, okay.
But I don't know. You get us inside and we start to get antsy. You put us inside too long, and you're like, dude, I gotta get outside.
Man, that's wild. Like you said, man, the contrast is crazy. So let me ask you this: being from the fitness world, like how many calories were you burning, or like how much, like, so, maybe like a more, whatever, like a typical fire would be, right? You start the trip off, like how much weight are you losing? How much, how many calories are you burning per day? Like, just give us a rough idea of what that looks like.
That very first fire, and I got to send you a picture again. That very first fire, I came in around 260, and that is huge for a wildland firefighter because of how much cardio and endurance that is needed. So I came in at 260 on that first fire, left, no joke, around 230. Like, whoa. I was sucked up because all day you're spending 16 hours of just back-breaking cardio and endurance and hiking and swinging and cutting and hiking. And so there's that. I can say, because I wear a heart rate monitor when we were doing our PT hikes and stuff, just because I was curious. On our PT hikes and our long days of training, be like not even on a fire, just training, I could easily burn 5,000 to 6,000 calories. And that's an 8-hour day like that.
All right. So, and we're back. We had a little technical difficulties, which happens. It happens on the Zoom thing. So where did we leave? Oh, it was the calories you were burning.
Yeah. So being so big, right? Being at 260 pounds, which is huge for a wildland firefighter, and then trying to maintain the pace on average of dudes who are anywhere from 160 to 180. The best way I like to say it is I'm a tank trying to do Prius shit, like I'm built different. And so I burn more, and
sure.
I like to joke with the guys, more mass requires more gas. And those dudes can just slay all day, where I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm getting my ass handed to me right now. So I burn, like I was saying, on our training days, I can burn anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 calories. And then on a fire, you can easily double that. which is insane to think of.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I'm curious. Obviously, I kind of, I didn't want to say it, but I kind of assumed like you were a bigger like version of these wildland firefighters. I didn't want to say it, but you're like, like I said, dude, I think of you as like a football player size. Like you're a big dude. So what is a typical, like how much bigger are you than the majority of these dudes? Like I'm just gonna say it. How much bigger are you?
We had, I think, what's crazy too. So I'm 32. Most wildland firefighters are young. Like they're still single because they can still be away from home and not have to worry about anything. So on average, they're usually 19 to 25, and it's your leadership that's in their 30s. So to be a rookie in your 30s kind of sucks. But most on average, these guys are, again, you're talking a 19, 25-year-old, they're 160 to 185 pounds and that's when they're in tip-top shape. They'll come in preseason around 200 pounds, but they're usually not more than 200 pounds. When people would find out how heavy I was, and then you throw on, a 45-pound pack, and then you throw on all your boots and stuff, I'm on the trail 300 plus pounds with everything on. And then, like I told you, fighting fires at 9,700 feet, just dying.
Jeez. I guess so, man. Like they just see you from the distance, like, oh, there's the Hulk on the mountain fighting fires.
Was that, they would once so joke, they're like, bro, we can hear you before we see you, because I'd be I'm like, I'm fine, dude. I'm on my way. Just ignore how I'm breathing.
Dude, that's wild. So was there ever like, did they ever like when you first came in, was there ever, I don't want to say concern, because obviously you're in good shape, but did they look at your size, and was there ever a question as like, will this really work? Or was there any hesitation there, or have they seen this type of thing before?
My superintendent, who's my captain, he straight up told me, he's like, dude, you're gonna lose 40 to, if not 50 pounds by the end of the season. And I was like, oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. And he's a big dude as well. So he's like, no, trust me. Oh shit, all right. Okay. So having to keep up with these younger guys who weigh less, I would have to do a lot of extra credit hikes just to close the gap. And I'm talking, we would get, our PT hikes, our PT days, and then I would purposely off the clock have to go gear up and go hike the same thing we just hiked, so that I could become a better, faster, stronger hiker because of how big I was. And again, I'm a rookie, so I don't know if there are any other big dudes who have to do that. I just have my own pride of not wanting to be the guy that's always last. And then like, damn, bro, you're big, but you're useless, So I had to prove the myth wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's the athlete in you. That's that competitor. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be one of your biggest benefits for sure. Which brings me to the question. Obviously, we didn't go too deep into it here. Like I said, go back and listen to a different podcast that Tyler's been on to hear his full story. But it's a crazy story. It's a crazy upbringing. You went through a lot of stuff, a lot of traumatic stuff. And that's one of those things where we look back and we say, you hear people say all the time, like, I wouldn't go back and change anything because of how it's made me the person I am today. I don't know if we've had a guest that can say that in a more, a greater way than you, because I imagine that a lot of the stuff that you went through as a kid, as a teenager, as a young person has had a tremendous effect on your mindset and your mental toughness doing what you're doing now. Like, how do you feel about that?
It's so true that you say it. One of the, and again, I had a lot of time in the woods to think about this, but one of the things, right, which when I mentioned earlier that I was in gangs, was I have this need for acceptance and this need for approval. And what I once thought as it almost being a negative, I've been able to turn into a positive. And that need for acceptance and that need for approval, especially out on the fire line, they don't just hand you acceptance and they don't just hand you approval. It's earned through some of the hardest work ever and being the hardest worker out there. So wanting to make, my overhead proud and wanting to make my family proud, and always it just has pushed me to search for deeper depths of how can I get more, you know? And, you know, again, part of that traumatic upbringing, you can call it oh, dude, that's a low key insecurity. And I might agree with you, you're right, but I've been able to use it as something to help propel me because I need that acceptance and I need that approval. And then once I get that acceptance and approval, I then go even harder because I don't want to lose it, you know, and understanding that about myself, I'm able to channel it, push through some shit and get the outcome that I'm there for.
Yeah. That's really good. I gotta ask this question, man, because like I said, we were joking about some of the stuff on Instagram, which I'm guilty. You know this. You followed us for a little while. I post the motivational crap all the time. I admit it, but I'm also not a CEO, someone who's at the same level as you are. Like, how much does it bother you when you're on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and you see these guys that, again, are at the same level? Because I'm not talking about like. Because here's my thing. I know people, that stuff bothers people. I believe that like some people, like if they see a post that could really like inspire and motivate them, I'm fine with that. Where I'm talking specifically the people that are at your level, CEOs, entrepreneurs, people who are supposed to be at the top, that post stuff like that, like, you know, was it like earned, not given, stuff like that. Like, considering that you're at the same level, but also fighting fires, like how much does that type of stuff drive you nuts when you're looking kind of across at your peers who are kind of doing the same thing as you?
My knee-jerk reaction is I just want to call them on their bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
dude, be real. Like, so these people amass these great followings, right? And they have all these people who are just glued to them and they're searching for this missing piece, right? And let's just say someone, and I'm just throwing out, let's just say someone like Gary Vee, right? He's got all these followers and he's got all these fans, and he's got all these people who look up to him. It's like, damn, bro. And I'm not saying he does this, but why not tell the truth? Dude, this shit sucks. Running a business isn't as fun as you think it is, and you're gonna lose your fucking hair, right? And you're gonna go through some of the hardest transformations ever. And if you're not real and raw with yourself, you're gonna lose your fucking business. And the chance of you losing your business is realer than fucking death. And people don't get it. So they put out hustle, grind, grit, you know, and here's some fucking daily motivation. You can do it. Yeah, you can do it, but you're gonna get kicked in the fucking teeth more than you can realize. And
Sure.
That's where I'm almost disappointed with the industry is, you know, the more authentic and again, vulnerable and transparent we can be, the more trust we can build, then yeah, let's build a following off of authenticity, trust, and vulnerability. Like, dude, if you're struggling, come to me and I'll help you. But I'm not gonna be like, oh, dude, I don't have time for you because I'm the CEO. That's lame, you know?
Yeah.
If you're struggling, then come to me, you know, let's create a friendship. But this whole I'm better than you because I own a business. Well, shit, dude, you make 2 wrong decisions in a row and you could be at Walmart, you know what I mean? And you could be a greeter because you messed up. And so I think the greatest privilege with this platform is to share just how nasty it is. And shit, I can tell you so many entrepreneurs behind the scenes who tell me, shit, dude, not owning the business, like employee days, is some of the best days ever because I don't have to do it. What do you want me to do? You want me to sweep? I'll sweep. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't have to focus on growth, marketing, sales, and all this other stuff just to make a few extra bucks. So I really just want transparency. I just want vulnerability, you know, and that doesn't seem to be where the mass of people are going. And if everyone wants to follow some motivational and be some motivational speaker, that's great. But I guarantee you, if you took a hard left and were to be real, you'd have a bigger following and a faster audience than you'd realize.
Absolutely. Well, and I can't, well, it's probably good. I can't remember the dude's name, so I won't call him out, but I did hear a podcast with somebody. He was a younger guy. He was probably like his mid-20s, which you know, which is always a little bit weird, right? Like, he's making more money than I am, but it's just, when you hear him talk the way he was talking, it was like, yeah, you're not even 25 yet. But the thing so this person was interviewing him and basically saying, well, how do you deal with this in business? Or how do you deal with that in business? And he kept saying stuff like, just got to do it. What do you mean you just got to do it? Like, that's not helpful. But I feel like there's a lot of people in that world where they reach this point of success and they want to say like, here's the 5 keys to, you know, successful business. And basically they're saying, you just had to go out and do it. Like, that's not helpful to anybody. Like, I'm sure there were steps that you took to get to where you're like, oh, I'm just trying to figure out what the steps are, or how to, navigate this world. But like, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think, is it just because they feel like there's this facade of them being like a multimillionaire who is, has reached the pinnacle of their craft, and they don't want to ruin that image? Or, I mean, what do you think it is that makes them do that? Because, like, as we're talking about this, like, to me, it makes no sense. What you're saying makes a ton of sense, where, hey, be real and people are going to respect the real. But it doesn't seem to be the case for a lot of people. I think because of social media, they want to put this facade on and say, like, I'm doing a lot better than maybe they really are. So like, what do you think? What's the mentality for someone, and why do they do that?
I can almost tell you, right? Like, it goes back to acceptance and approval, and maybe this is the first time this person has been accepted, has been approved, and they eat that shit up like a drug. And so they just mainline it. I mean, they are just addicted to the feeling of like, hey, bro, I'm proud of you. And you're like, fuck, dude, I don't even know you. I don't even know where the fuck you live, but you're proud of me. And they eat it up and they can't get enough. Where, they would get 10 times more those reactions if they're like, look, dude, I own 2 businesses and I have a nice house and I'm struggling with leadership. So I went out to go fight wildland fires so I can learn better leadership. Someone would be like, damn, that's fucking crazy. I respect that. But what happens is the same thing. People are trying to just make money so quickly that they lose sight of who they are and they lose their identity, right? Like I was saying, I got wrapped up in it, lost my identity, and all I cared about was money, money, money. And I was borderline losing every relationship close to me. And so the problem with social media is just that, is I can post, go out and rent this Lamborghini and say, oh, look at me, I'm a badass. Like, oh, that's fucking badass. Like, no, dude, I rented it for $500, and
yeah,
that's the tough part is, again, there's so much convenience at our fingertips that people have lost respect of earning things. People have lost the pride of, I fucking built that, or I did that, or I conquered that, where it's easy to be like, let me go on this app, order this, and I'm going to hold this stack of money that I got, from Amazon as a prop, and you're going to like it, and I'm going to love all the endorphins I get from it. The game is fucking ruined. There's no game to it. It's just lame, and there's no authenticity, and that's what breaks my heart.
Yeah, man, we could have ended the podcast so many times tonight. Like, you just keep dropping these gems, dude. You just keep dropping this knowledge, and it's like a mic drop, mic drop, mic drop. Hey man, that's probably why your mic's not working right now. You probably you dropped it too many times. You know what I mean? Okay, man. So I want to ask you one more question, because this is actually something you brought to the table, and you mentioned as we were kind of messaging back and forth and setting this whole thing up, and I thought this was really fascinating. So I want to end with this before I ask you the final connection suggestion question. But you mentioned something that was really interesting to me, and you basically said, I've been doing this thing for 6 months. I've been just in basically in hell on earth for 6 months. And now I come home to this incredible house that I have, this life where you live in an amazing area. And I think the word you used was bored, which is understandable, man. Like, most people will be like, I got back to this house and I can relax. I can breathe for a second. I'm not in the middle of this craziness, but you're like, I'm kind of bored, dude. So I'm just gonna leave it there. Like, hey, man, I'm handing the ball off, run with it. Like,
all right,
explain the mentality, dude.
We have these insanely packed, a true 16-hour day, right? From the minute we step off to legit the time we finally are going to bed, it is the hardest 16 hours ever. And you go from, again, all these highs and lows, and you see all these beautiful things, and you're so unplugged from the whole world and society that you then get shoved back into society, and you're like, okay, well, operate. Like, fuck, dude, I've been running off adrenaline, grit, and caffeine like it's survival. And I come home and now it's, well, what TV show do you want to watch? And where do you want to go to get fast food? And I'm like, fuck, and this is my first real week home, and I'm losing it, you know.
Mm.
I am bored, and not having that hardcore structure and not having that sense of savage brotherhood that just holds you to the utmost accountable pedestal that you name of, like any slight deviant, they're like, bro, you're fucking lazy today. To now going home and I'm like, I have nothing to do. You know, like there's business stuff, but I'm compared to fighting fires, I'm like, it's a hard reality to come back to. And I am, man. Like, again, being vulnerable and transparent. The wife and I had a small disagreement before the podcast over something. It was just a miscommunication, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is, I guess, real life. Yeah. It's just, you're like, oh man, it is what it is.
Well, it's a lot like, you know, someone who comes back from being in the military or even a professional athlete where, I mean, obviously those are very different things, but the idea of you've lived this life for however many years with structure. Like if you take an athlete, for example, you have your morning routine, then you go to practice and you do that. Then you go to the massage therapist and then you know, prepare and game film, whatever the process is. Like it's like that for however many years, right? Like look at Brady.
Yeah.
The dude's been playing 20 plus years. That's been his life for 20 something years. Like, I guess beyond that, right? Like if you go to college, you know, high school, like he's been that same process all the time. I don't even know what he's going to do when he stops playing.
Okay, mark my words, and I hate to say it, when Brady retires, he's going to jail. That dude's not going to know what to do with himself. And he has so much money, so much power, so much influence, he's going to implode. And I don't wish it on him, but
okay, I'm going to timestamp that just so if it happens, that's like, hey, Tyler called it. but the point being, man, that, you know, someone like that, like into your, you know, you did it for 6 months. I don't want to say only, I didn't mean to say only 6 months. 6 months is a long time considering what you were doing, but like in the grand scheme of life, 6 months is nothing, but it probably felt like an eternity out there. And so, yeah, it was plenty of time for you to come back here and say, this is not as exciting. It's not as exciting, which is crazy. So so what do you like? How do you deal with that though, man?
I'm going to say try because I haven't been successful yet. So I am trying my best to structure myself accordingly to a schedule that makes me feel proud of myself when I look in the mirror, you know? So it is that early morning wake up. It is a hard day. It is, you know, a legit hard workout and either a walk or hike, because being plugged in and being inside and indoors, I have this hard struggle of just being antsy, for a lack of better words, but it's I almost get cabin fever where I'm like, I got to be outside, you know, because we've been outside. And so I'll say this real quick. In 2 months, when we were on the fire line, we had put in 960 hours in 2 months.
Whoa.
So you break down 960 hours by the average work week, which is 40 hours. That comes out to, in 2 months, we put in 6.5 months of work in 2 months. So if you, you know what I mean? So you are so hardwired of just going. And then you finally stop and you're like, but I don't know how to stop. And that's the struggle.
Jeez. Hey, well, all I can say is good luck, man. Good luck with that. That's intense. That's crazy. Well, hey man, I just want to say, definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate everything that you guys are doing, everything you guys have done and continue to do. Like, it's obviously a crazy intense job. And I know you guys probably get people saying thank you all the time, but yeah, I mean, we appreciate it, man. We appreciate all the hard work you guys put in and putting your life on the line all the time. And I can speak for our audience as well. Like, I know they feel the same way, man. So, yeah, a lot of respect to what you guys are doing, especially, like I said, you didn't have to, you know what I mean? You didn't have to, like, you were set and you could just live a comfortable life, but a lot of respect, man, for seeking that leadership and, you know, just kind of continuing to sharpen the iron that way, man. That's impressive for sure. So before we get out of here, I've got to know, man, we have our connection suggestion which is at the end. We basically, if this feels like a dumb question after everything you just said, it's like, this is a massive dip as far as intensity, but basically it's a shout out, man. It's like a person organization, brand. It could be a restaurant, like a local restaurant. Just one thing that you feel like our audience should be aware of and should start following and maybe check out.
I definitely think the audience should check out Wildland Firefighter Foundation. They are a nonprofit that helps any injured firefighter in the line of duty, and it's wildland firefighters because there's not a lot of resources for federal wildland firefighters. So they will help them out with medical expenses, you name it, any kind of injury or fatality that happens, they will either take care of that firefighter or the family or both. Like, they are really honest, upstanding foundation. So Wildland Firefighter Foundation, nonprofit, and they really are doing some amazing things for the entire, community of federal firefighters. And in person, it'd be an honor if you guys checked out, because he's the main reason for getting me into wildland firefighting. Chris Ruano, he's an LA County captain for the fire department out there. And that dude, when you see him, he's just a squared away savage, and he brings a lot of knowledge to the table, but again, doesn't quite get the social media attention that he deserves.
All right, perfect. We'll definitely follow both of those, man. I know this feels weird to ask you now because of what we said about social media, but where can they follow you?
The personal page is Conquering_Tyler. And the gym is Absolute Flex Appeal, Absolute_Flex_Appeal. And whether it's the personal page or the gym page, you'll be able to find the pages I'm associated with on there.
Awesome. And just so you guys know, we didn't really talk about this, but it's, you described it last time as a hardcore gym. This is a place with loud music, big people, lifting heavy weights. So if you're into that and that's your world, and you're like, I'm good at CalFit and 24, head over to, and you live in the Roseville, Rockland area, check it out, because I think you'll enjoy the environment and the atmosphere. So, man, this has been an honor and a privilege, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate you. And, hey man, good luck with everything. And we'll have to have you back on maybe after next summer to see how things have gone.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Josh.
Yes, sir. All right. Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable Podcast.